So here it is. We're about to vote on red flag laws. And again, I understand the arguments that have been made by the other side of the aisle and the concerns with respect to safety, and specifically some of the concerns that were brought up with respect to preventing suicide. But the thing I want to point out here is once again, despite the claim that a judge has to look at this before law enforcement can come to your home and confiscate your property, all it takes is a magistrate to sign an emergency protective order, and that can go forward. So yeah, the judge might be able to look at it 14 days later, but at that point, the action has already taken place. Police have already come to your home, and they have confiscated your property, not because you did something wrong, but because a magistrate was convinced that you might do something wrong. And then when they actually do that search warrant, do they have a specific search warrant to search a specific portion of your property for specific items? Not as far as I can tell. It looks like it's pretty open-ended for firearms. So here's the scenario. This is, in my opinion, a violation of Fourth Amendment rights, of Fifth Amendment rights, of Second Amendment rights, and like I said before, I think this will be potentially used to be a violation of First Amendment rights. As again, magistrates go over looking at your Facebook or your Twitter account or whatnot in order to determine, does this particular comment that you might have made constitute a substantial threat to yourself or others, or was it some offhanded comment you made? And what sort of incentive do they have? Do they have the incentive at that point to protect your First Amendment rights or your Second Amendment rights, or is there incentive at that point to use police force in order to take your property, to take your firearms? I think the incentive that we're creating for them is to take your firearms. And then finally, the argument for this with respect to the fact that it would actually help prevent suicide. Again, I will say again, I'm a combat veteran. I have a lot of friends that are combat veterans. You tell my combat veteran friends that the moment they reach out and they try to get help, that they can now potentially be in a situation where the police are going to come to their home and take their firearms, that is not going to encourage them to seek help. Not to mention the fact that because within this particular emergency protective order, the police are just going to show up, take your guns, and leave. They don't know how many firearms you have. So police show up, they search your house, they find the two obvious ones, right? They find the gun by the nightstand, maybe find the shotgun over the manual, and then they leave. And now you're sitting there alone, you feel stigmatized, law enforcement came to your house without any notification to take your property because you reached out to someone that you thought you could trust to help you, but you've still got one more gun left in the house. What do you think happens next at that point? So I would encourage everybody, don't just oppose this based off of violations of essential civil liberties, and I believe in eroding due process. Vote against this because I don't believe it's actually going to achieve the intended effect, especially with respect to preventing suicide. Thank you, Madam Speaker.